Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I have a review here for the, technically, Ghostbusters 4 of the franchise here. Been reviewing these films pretty much back-to-back this week. I talked about Ghostbusters 1 and 2 already from 84 and 89. I gave some brief thoughts in those reviews about the video game from 2009, which was really good from what I remember. And then I talked about the 2016 remake, which is quite a mouthful. It's a long review. Anyway, then I have this film here that kind of kicked off this marathon thing because I found out after watching this movie that there was a new Ghostbusters film coming out this March of 2024 called Frozen Empire. So here's the review for Ghostbusters Afterlife, which came out in 2021. Now, this is a requel that I had never seen, actually. It is a requel in the sense of basically being tied to those original two movies, but even more so Part 1 compared to Part 2. Part 1 is really the focus for this movie. It's almost an entire rehashing, almost line for line, not like dialogue line, but like beat for beat. Kind of the different elements of this are basically stolen directly from the original film, and I know a lot of people apparently weren't happy about that, but people were more happy with this Afterlife than they were whatever this shit is. That's understandable. It's understandable. To me, I'm not a big hardcore Ghostbusters fan. If you happen to be following my reviews, you probably already know that. But let me tell you, Ghostbusters Afterlife, I realized I still hadn't seen it. I couldn't believe it had already been 2 years, going on 3 years since this movie came out. Decided to give it a shot and rent it for like $4 the other day or $3, something like that on Prime. And it surprised me quite a bit. I really enjoyed it. I gotta be honest with you. It's a good flick. I really recommend it if you're into it. Now, Ghostbusters was never really a big children's franchise until the cartoons, until Ghostbusters 2. The OG film was kind of frightening. It kind of scared the hell out of me when I was a kid, and I think when most of you guys out there were kids. And Ghostbusters 2 had a little bit of that as well, but it was still on the sillier side, on the more cartoonish side than the original movie from '84. And the cartoons didn't help that reputation in between those two movies. Ghostbusters, I think, has slipped into being a children's franchise, aside from the OG film and aside from whatever this shit is. Ghostbusters Afterlife kind of reclaims that of being a sort of teenage movie, but kind of not. It also has a child for the main character, which I think a lot of adults are irritated over when this film came out. And I think a lot of kids don't give a shit about Ghostbusters, so it's kind of weird to see them take this approach. But anyway, I guess I'll start with the plot here. We follow a young girl who I believe is named Phoebe. It's been a few days since I watched the movie, but we follow her, and she's actually played by the young lady who played Theo as a child on the Haunting of Hill House Netflix special from whatever that guy's name is. I can't remember his name. Jesus, it's very late. It's 3 a.m., so forgive me. The fellow who made Midnight Mass and a lot of other big Netflix TV show things that were super beloved. So she's fantastic on that show. She is phenomenal here as this little girl named Phoebe, who is the granddaughter of Egon Spangler from back in the day. Of course, Harold Ramis has passed away, and in this film they kind of really honor him, which is weird because when this movie came out, they had no honoring Harold Ramis at all. Nothing. No memorial, nothing. 2 years after he passed away, they did nothing for him in this movie, which is kind of wild. But here we are many years later, 2021, nearly 8 years after the man's been dead. They do a better memorial service here for that guy than they ever did back in the day. This is also directed by the son of Ivan Reitman, the original director of the first two films. He actually was very involved, his son was, with this movie. And I think the whole film, from concept, behind the camera, all of it, is a passing the torch situation. From Ivan Reitman to his son, who directed this film, to the characters involved here. Again, with Phoebe being Egon's granddaughter, and she doesn't know it. She never met him, never knew anything about him. As far as her mom was concerned, he abandoned them back in the day, before Phoebe and her brother, played by Finn Wolfhard, by the way, were even born. So they get an inheritance from him when Egon is literally killed in the first part of the film. No face shown of Harold Ramis, and just kind of a stand-in and a silhouette. He gets killed, and they inherit his property. It's basically a farm in the middle of nowhere, and they lose their apartment, so all three of them, the mom and the two kids, have to move out to this place. By the way, the mom is fucking insufferable. I can't stand her. She's horrible. They move out to this farm in the middle of nowhere, and they also kind of I guess, meets some locals and whatever when Phoebe goes to school. She also ends up at a place, basically, where she has a teacher for summer school. Why is she in summer school? Whatever. She has a teacher who's played by Paul Rudd, who is basically playing Paul Rudd. And he's good at it, and I like Paul Rudd, so he was fun to watch here. But it kind of feels tacked on, just a little bit. You kind of feel like you didn't need him involved here, too. But still, this film, canonically, kind of ignores Ghostbusters 2, but kind of really centers on Ghostbusters 1. And again, it's kind of beat for beat stealing shit from the original Ghostbusters film. It's very much the most member-berries movie I've ever seen in my life, more so than the Disney Star Wars stuff, whatever product we're talking about, movies, TVs, shows, whatever, any of that shit. It's very much a member-berries movie. Is it successful at that, though? Because if it is, then I think it's okay. And I think in this case, it was good. I think it was kind of surprising. That's also coming from a perspective of somebody who's not a hardcore Ghostbusters fan. So you got to keep that in the back of your brain as you think about my opinion on this. I do think the writing is strong. I think that most of the characters are fairly well done, except for the mom. And Finn Wolfhard has literally nothing to do. He is there in the background. He might be driving or doing this or doing that. He might have a joke here or there that I like, one involving circles, and that's it. And aside from that, there's really nothing for him to do. The main focus is Phoebe here, and she also has a friend she makes from school named Podcast, and I really like him. I think he's really funny. It doesn't feel like the film is filled with improv like whatever this movie's supposed to be, but it was actually very well done for what it is. It's actually tastefully done with the love it has for Harold Ramis, how it admires him being one of the creators alongside Dan Aykroyd of the original 2 Ghostbusters movies. You gotta admire it for that. And again, it feels like a passing of torch film in every way possible. Behind the camera, in front of the camera, all of that is definitely there. It's definitely prevalent. And when you combine that with amazing CGI that I think was really good, and some good jokes and some good heart and soul, that by the end of it kind of feels bittersweet. Some of it feels genuine, some of it feels kind of forced a little bit, like the film is trying to make you think that you're more sad about what you're seeing than you actually are. There's a lot of that, by the way. Aside from those things, and aside from a kind of not always there score, I guess, it doesn't always feel like Ghostbusters. It feels more like a modern day requel version of Ghostbusters that can't really capture the magic of the original film. But I don't hate it. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. I would say behind the original film, this is probably my next favorite, when it comes to ranking them out at least. At the moment, until Frozen Empire comes out, but I really feel like Frozen Empire is not going to be good. I don't know why. I just have this feeling. It's the Ghostbusters franchise, number 1, but number 2, it's the sequel to Afterlife. What else can you do with that? You know, I don't know. Anyway, Ghostbusters Afterlife is incredible in a lot of really good ways. It's fun to watch. It has some good moments. It's like 2 hours long, though, and it takes a long time to get there. It takes like to the halfway point to really get into the ghost stuff, to really get into the proton pack stuff or the Ecto-1 stuff, all of those things making a feature in this movie, being a proponent of this film, being a character of this movie. But I agree with a lot of people who complained back in the day about something like the backdrop of New York City being a personality, being a character of those first 2 films, taking that out of the element and putting us in the middle of nowhere, in like farmland USA, is a weird choice, and I don't know how much I like it for the Ghostbusters franchise. I could see why really hardcore fans that are older than me would be so put off with this movie as they were. But I do think it's funny because after a lot of people experienced their own version of The Last Jedi, after mocking all of us for ages, of course this came out before Last Jedi by a year, after the experience Ghostbusters fans had, Afterlife was kind of their redemption. It was kind of their Mandalorian, I think, a lot of the time. But it almost feels like a half-assed apology for whatever this is. You know what I mean? I feel bad for the Ghostbusters fans out there, the hardcore fans. Anyway, when it comes to Afterlife, I find myself liking it a lot, but I'm also a normie to the franchise. I've only seen these films a handful of times per movie, so that kind of tells you all you need to know. This is the only time I've ever seen Afterlife, so I'm glad that I finally checked it out and watched it. I'm looking forward to Frozen Empire. It's one of the films I'm actually very curious about for this year, but I don't know how excited I am about it. Coming out the same month with things like Dune Part 2, and also the new MonsterVerse film, Kong x Godzilla, whatever it's called. I'm really looking towards Kong more than anything, because I really love that Kong vs. Godzilla movie. And I love 2014 Godzilla, so I got a lot to look forward to. Anyway, have you seen Ghostbusters Afterlife? What did you think about it? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments about it down in the comment section down below. Did you love the film? Do you hate the movie? Do you think it's a piece of shit or just a member-berries mess? I'd love to hear all of that down below too. If I had to rate Ghostbusters Afterlife on a 5-star basis though, I think I'd easily give this like a pretty low, but a good 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was solid. I thought it was fun for what it was. I feel like in some respects, I'm more positive on this than I am the original Ghostbusters movie. But at the same time, the original is so creative and wonderful for what it was at its time. It's so good and it's timeless in certain elements. Ghostbusters Afterlife, we're all not going to feel that way about in the future. And I can tell that already watching it for the first time ever, that it could easily have a bad sequel immediately coming up this March, or maybe the next time that we make another sequel. I don't know. But Ghostbusters should have been one film and that's it. No cartoons, no movie sequels, nothing. It feels like I feel that more and more as I watch these films. I see what other people are saying about movies that I love, like Halloween as a franchise, or Friday the 13th, or Nightmare on Elm Street as a franchise. I get where people are coming from, and if you love it, you love it, but still. Anyway, what do you think about it? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments down and below. Do you think this was the proper direction to go with Ghostbusters as a franchise and an IP? I'd love to hear all that down below too. Thank you all for watching, guys. God bless you all, and goodbye.